Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another reading of Aesop's Fables, but also the last of Aesop's Fables. Dun dun dun. As I said a couple days ago, that we have very few left, and we're going to do the last four. The last two are very long. You can probably also tell by the sound of my voice, I'm a little scratchy, rough, or I wouldn't say gruff, but whatever. A little chilly down here in Canada, or up here, sorry. So just bear with me, please. Without further ado, let us get into it. Let us start off with The Ants and the Grasshopper. One bright day in late autumn, a family of ants were bustling about in the warm sunshine, drying out the grain they had stored up during the winter, when a starving grasshopper, his fiddle under his arm, came up and humbly begged for a bite to eat. "What?" cried the ants in surprise. "Haven't you stored anything away for the winter? What in the world were you doing all last summer?" "I didn't have time to store up any food," whined the grasshopper. "I was too busy making music that before I knew it, the summer was gone." The ants shrugged their shoulders in disgust. "Making music, were you?" they cried. "Very well, now dance." And they turned their backs on the grasshopper and went on with their work. Moral of this fable: there's a time for work, and there's a time for play. Let us move on to the next one. The Hare and the Tortoise. A classic. A hare was making fun of the tortoise one day for being so slow. "Do you ever get anywhere?" he asked with a mocking laugh. "Yes," replied the tortoise, "and I get there sooner than you think. I'll run you a race and prove it." The hare was much amused at the idea of running a race with the tortoise, but for the fun of the thing he agreed. So the fox, who had consented to the act of judge, marked the distance and started the runners off. The hare was soon far out of sight, and to make it the tortoise feel very deeply how ridiculous it was for him to try and race a hare. He lay down beside the course to take a nap until the tortoise should catch up. The tortoise meanwhile kept going, slowly but steadily, and after a time passed the place where the hare was sleeping. But the hare slept on very peacefully, and when at last he did wake up, the tortoise was near the goal. The hare now ran his swiftest, but he could not overtake the tortoise in time. Moral of this fable: the race is not always to the swift. Foolish rabbit. All right, now on to one of the two long ones. The Owl and the Grasshopper. Let me just fix this. Go away. The Owl and the Grasshopper. The owl always takes her sleep during the day. Then after sundown, when the rosy light fades from the sky and the shadows rise slowly through the wood, out she comes, ruffling and blinking from the old hollow tree. Now her weird "hoo, hoo, hoo, oo, oo" echoes through the quiet wood, and she begins her hunt for the bugs and beetles, frogs and mice she likes so well to eat. Now there was a certain old owl who had become very cross and hard to please as she grew older, especially if anything disrupted her daily slumbers. One warm summer afternoon, as she dozed away in her den in the old oak tree, a grasshopper nearby began a joyous but very raspy song. Out popped the old owl's head from the opening in the tree that served her both for door and for a window. "Get away from here, sir," she said to the grasshopper. Ooh. "Get away from here, sir," she said to the grasshopper. "Have you no manners? You should at least respect my age and leave me to sleep in quiet." But the grasshopper answered saucily that he had as much right in his place in the sun as the owl had to her place in the old oak. Then he struck up a louder and still more rasping tune. The wise old owl knew quite well that it would do no good to argue with the grasshopper, nor with anybody else for that matter. Besides, her eyes were not sharp enough by day to permit her to punish the grasshopper as he deserved. So she laid aside all hard words and spoke very kindly to him. Well, sir, well, sir, she said, if I must stay awake, I'm going to settle right down to enjoy your singing. Now that I think of it, I have a wonderful wine here sent me from Olympus, from which I'm told Apollo drinks before he sings to the high gods. Please come up and taste this delicious drink with me. I know it will make you sing like Apollo himself. The foolish grasshopper was taken in by the owl's flattering words. Up he jumped to the owl's den, but as soon as he was near her enough, so the old owl could see him clearly, she pounced upon him and ate him up. Moral of this fable. Flattery is not a proof of true admiration. Do not let flattery throw you off your guard against an enemy. That was rough there. I do apologize, folks. Let's move on to the final one. Just as long, maybe longer. The Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. Oops. A town mouse once visited a relative who lived in the country. For lunch, the country mouse served wheat stalks, roots, and acorns, with a dash of cold water for drink. The town mouse ate very sparingly, nibbling a little of this and a little of that, and by her manner making it very plain that she ate the simple food only to be polite. After the meal, the friends had a long talk, or rather, the town mouse talked about her life in the city, while the country mouse listened. They then went to bed in a cozy nest in the hedgerow. I think I said that right. Hedgerow, and slept in quiet and comfort until morning. In her sleep, the country mouse dreamt she was a town mouse, with all the luxuries and delights of city life that her friend had described for her. So the next day, the town mouse asked the country mouse to go home with her to the city. She gladly said yes. When they reached the mansion in which the town mouse lived, they found on the table in the dining room the leavings of a very fine banquet. There were sweetmeats and jellies, pastries, delicious cheese, indeed, the most tempting foods that a mouse can imagine. But just as the country mouse was about to nibble a dainty bite of pastry, she heard a cat meow loudly and scratch at the door. In great fear, the mice scurried to a hiding place where they lay quiet still for a long time, hardly trying to breathe. When at last they ventured back to the feast, the door opened suddenly, and in came the servants to clear the table, followed by the house dog. The country mouse stopped in the town mouse's den, only long enough to pick up her carpet bag and umbrella. "You may have luxuries and dainties that I have not," she said as she hurried away, "but I prefer my plain food and simple life in the country with the peace and security that go with it. Moral of this fable. Poverty with security is better than plenty in the midst of fear and uncertainty. That was real touch and go. It was real rough. I do apologize, folks, but we are all human. We all make mistakes. And, again, I'm a little under the weather, so I do thank you for bearing with me. I hope you enjoyed these Aesop's Fables. We'll be doing a new form of reading next week. But until then, we're going to change up the videos for the weekend. And I hope you all have a very good evening. Until then, you have a fine, fine evening again, my friends. Till next time.